Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on Play on GAA with me, Seamus Brady, and for this one I am joined once again by Luke Peyton, as we're going to run through, Luke, the absolutely ridiculous amount of games which took place over the weekend. We had all the hurling action and all the football action, all the ladies football action, all the camogie action, so much action to get through weekend here on Play on GAA. This video is going to focus purely on the hurling. There are going to be other ones for all four codes, so make sure you check them out here on the channel. But Luke, as for the hurling, how did you find the action? Of course, the hurling league in a bit of a weird place. Obviously, we saw the scene of John Kiley and Henry Shefflin having a chuckle on the sideline. Definitely won't see that if the game is being played in mid-July. But what did you make of the games?
Yeah, it's a strange. You're right. That's a strange time for the hurling. I think there's serious kind of questions needs to be asked with the calendar in this as well. Is that like we for the last week was a gap week for hurling, and it's back this week. But then next week's another gap week, and it's just it's very hard to get the momentum going in the league at the moment as well. Is that I think I personally want to be seeing more games happening all the time, and like after last week, you see Cork having that great win down in Galway, Kilkenny and Tip as well, and these kind of games where Limerick getting a bit of momentum, and you just kind of want to be seeing these teams play all the time. I don't really understand why we have to be having another gap week next week, and why we can't be playing again next week. And if those games are played next week, the league's finished a week earlier as well, and it gives teams another week to be leading into the championship as well. That they've another rest week before that as well. It's more of a motivation for teams to go out and try and win the league as well. But the way it's set up at the moment is that like there's no with the way it's working out, potentially 2 weeks if you win in the league final, potentially 2 weeks you're coming out back again. If the calendar is just fixed slightly, 3 weeks is a huge difference already there, and of a difference going in. So I don't really understand that. I do think it's kind of harming the league a little bit as well, the structures by which are in place. But look, the games, some interesting results at the weekend that we're going to get into here as well, and some really interesting narratives too. I just really wish that we had the games a little more bit congested, just so it could build a bit more momentum and we could have the same sort of excitement that the football is kind of getting at the moment.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And as for the GA booking fixtures and booking venues for places, I mean, one of the maddest things I've seen, obviously, big shout out to the GA statsman, Matthew Hurley. He pointed out to me that Derry and Kildare obviously were playing each other in the weekend in football and in hurling. The Derry footballers against the Kildare footballers was happening in Newbridge, and the Kildare hurlers against the Derry hurlers was happening in Owen Beg on the same day. Just such disregard, in my opinion, such disregard for the fans of these counties, basically saying, nah, go pick one. Because, if you want to watch the hurlers, you're going to have to miss the footballers. And if you're going to watch the footballers, you're going to have to miss the hurlers. Like, what did you make of that booking? That was just ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, it would be a fairly novel double heading that it would be a great like for fans to go as well. Imagine that like for Derry and Kildare fans as well. Look, hurling's probably in both is considered probably the lesser preferred sport in both of them as well. But like it would have been great to see a double header in there as well. And just a quick shout out as well. We won't be getting to cover it, but Kildare won their third game in a row and in an absolutely great place in Division 2A as well. So if they looks like they're going to get into a final in 2A and going to have a shot and going up to Division 1, which would be absolutely brilliant. And that another team emerging in Leinster as well. So a great shout out to them as well. Naas have been absolutely flying in recent years, and they look like a team that I'd say could, like if not this year, could get up to Division 1 soon and kind of break that kind of circle where it's been only kind of Westmeath, Laois and Antrim kind of and maybe Offaly sharing Division 1 in recent years. So it'd be great to see.
Oh, without doubt. I mean, I'm absolutely rooting for them. David Herity there doing absolutely superb work with them. So let's crack in then. We had obviously 6 games taking place in Division 1 across 1A and 1B. We're going to start though with the defending All-Ireland champions who went away to Galway Pearse Stadium in Tuam and won by 24 points to 19 points. And this one, really, really interesting game because I think for long parts, look, Limerick, I think, were the better side for long parts of the game. And then when they hit 21 points and they went, that they got that little bit of a cushion, Galway pulled them back. And then there was one key moment that we are going to start with, the most controversial moment of the game, that Kyle Hayes incident. For me, red card. You see him whip back and hit the man in the helmet. Again, it's another Limerick disciplinary incident.
Yeah, it's a stone wall of red as you're ever going to see, and that look, I think that look Hayes is already on a yellow card as well, so like it's not it just had to be that it wasn't spotted, and I think when you saw the replays of it, the linesman was signaling for the sideline and he was pointing the flag up, uh, uh, signaling the sideline at the time. So he was doing that and he wasn't looking behind them where the Hayes incident happened. And then I think Sean Stack had us back to it too. So that's the incident there is that the two people in that were the only two people that were possible to see it weren't facing the incident at the time, so they don't give the red card as well. I don't know if umpires could have seen it as well. This is going to just lead into more thing about do we use that if a camera can clearly see something, why can't the referee just have it in his ear said that look that it's a clear that somebody sitting up in the box as well and saying look it's as clear a strike to the head as you're ever going to see. It was pointed out as well, I think just on League Sunday there, that where there was an incident in the first half where Will O'Donoghue got a yellow card for a head-high tackle, which was extremely harsh in the first half, where Monaghan kind of tripped and fell into his kind of stomach nearly, and he was given a yellow card for it. Whereas then we see Hayes with a striking action, like a clear striking action with intent into the head, and it's not punished as well. And then look, I know Limerick fans were quite aggrieved, but Tom Monaghan swung across Keane Lynch's helmet too, got a yellow card for that. That could have probably been a red card too, based on what some of the red cards we've seen there as well. But like, there's no way that Hayes should have still been on the pitch there as well. And look, maybe I still think Limerick probably go on and still win that game as well. But I think it's just more so the bigger issue here is that like it can't be allowed to have clear strikes with intent like that to go without a red card too. And like I don't like I think looking at it as well, no Limerick fan would have had complaints if you went there as well. And like I do think in a way for Limerick, like these things might nearly prefer that he got a red card there and learned a harsh lesson by doing so. By getting away with it, I'm not sure if they're by not being punished for it as well, this could come back to bite them later on in the year too. And there was this debate went on last year that it picked up a lot of red cards in the league and then it was clamped out. Kylie like came down strong on them as well, and that their discipline improved hugely in championship as well. And there was no disciplinary issues when it came to championship. Whereas now, look, they've got away with a red card here as well. They just need to make sure that this thing doesn't creep into their game as well, because when they're the champions as well, every team's coming for them. Teams are going to be up in their face as well. They can't allow themselves to react to this sort of thing. And look, I think that's nearly big issue for Limerick this year will be can they keep the head as well? And if they can, look, they're going to be heavy favourites for the All Ireland. But teams are going to be start trying to wind them up as well. Like people are saying, Concannon had a little bit of a swipe at Hayes, but it doesn't matter if you had a little swipe at him as well. You can't allow yourself to react in that nature because it was absolutely ridiculous. Like what Hayes did there.
Yeah, but that's my point is that if they don't cut that out, there's going to be a big red card that will come for them in a big game, an All Ireland semi-final or an All Ireland final. Someone like who has had questionable incidents in the past, the likes of a Kyle Hayes, a Gerard Hegarty, an Aaron Gillan. Like I remember him pulling back on a Tipperary defender. I think it was Carl Barrett. Like if one of them goes in an All Ireland final, like they could be in big trouble. We will get into the actual game itself. One thing that I noticed straight away, and we'll look at it from a Galway perspective, it's a very, very new forward line. Like, I mean, considering, 2018, Galway went into that All-Ireland final against Limerick as defending All-Ireland champions. I think off the top of my head, look, I know Whelan didn't start, but I'd actually be surprised now if any forward that started that 2018 All-Ireland final started the other day.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's look, Whelan and Conor Cooney are the ones that have managed to retain their spot a little bit. But I honestly think that Shefflin
Conor Cooney was there.
Yeah, but I honestly think that Shefflin was kind of keeping his cards pretty close to his chest today, and that when I saw the starting team, I thought it was absolutely bizarre that Conor Whelan was dropped, that Concannon was dropped, and even Darren Morrissey being dropped, and like. I just thought that for going in against Limerick, but it was going to be their toughest league game, that Whelan and Concannon have been absolutely on fire the last couple of weeks and they look absolutely imperious, and that for them not to be in there as well. I think Shefflin was trying to keep his cards very close to his chest, and do you know what? I think he'll be very, very happy with how this game's turned out. I think with you list the players that are still to come back in off the top of my head. Aina Murphy didn't start, Dahi Burke, Darren Morrissey, Fintan Burke, Ronan Glennon was starting last year. David Burke was starting last year as well. Connor Whelan as well was back in there. Concannon, Cathal Mannion. And the fact is that barring though, like at the time of that Kyle Hayes red card, that was a 2-point game at the time. If the red card happens as well, like that, they could have potentially could have kicked on and won that game as well, missing all those players. And to be honest, when you look through that Limerick team as well, Burns, Hannon, Galan were the ones that were missing there as well, and Mike Casey. But other than that, it was a full strength team. So I think Henry would be quite happy with how they got on. Like, albeit once Lynch went off, Limerick did kind of start surrendering a few points at that stage. But Galway were right in that game as well. And all Galway have to do in the league, really, I think, is find one or two extra pieces. And like, you look at particularly Kevin Cooney, I thought hit 2 outrageous scores from all angles. And so Sean Lannan in midfield, he's kind of starting every single game in the league. He started in midfield. It looks like Henry's trying to develop him into a potential starter. Keenan Fahey as well looks to be kicking on too a little bit as well. So that's all they have to do is find. I'd say when it comes to championship, their starting team will be much the same as what it was last year. But I think if they could add in maybe 5 players that are going to come off the bench and make an actual impact, then I think that's job done in the league for Galway. So I think Henry's quite happy with where they're at.
Agreed. And then I'd like to add in another one, Martin McManus. I think he looked really, really good against Cork, and then he had a good performance against Limerick in this one as well. So you mentioned where you think Shefflin would be at after this game. Where do you think Kiley would be at after this game? Because with the Hayes incident, I think there's definitely a potential, not weakness, you don't want to run with it, but with Aaron Glenn as well, such uncertainty about whether or not he's coming back, and the longer it goes on, and then obviously with the Hayes disciplinary issue, like, will he be happy? Like, they've left with the win, but where will his head be at after that?
I actually do think he'll be happy. I think they're in a good spot though as well. I do think that Limerick look good, and that I'd say no doubt about it that they are being run quite heavily in training as well. But I think if you compare where they're at this time of the year as to where they were last year, I think they're miles ahead of where they were at. So I think their improvement is huge. And yeah, look, the Galan thing is, look, it's very interesting. It's really, really interesting. And
because look, they didn't look like they were threatening much goals.
Yeah, it is true. But you could say that even last year, a lot of the games they played as well in the latter stage of the All-Ireland, they kind of can be happy sometimes just hitting points and then say, yeah, we're not going to score goals, but we're scoring 30 plus points. And when they get to Croke Park, there is a good chance that they are scoring 30 plus points. Like, I do think, look, they probably do need Galan for that goal threat because he's their goal getter, really. And like, outside of that, they're like, Casey and Flanagan can go through games and hit 4 or 5 points, but they're probably not goal threats. But then, like, at the same time, I'm a big fan of this fellow O'Brien in the corner, that he's came in and he looks absolutely superb. Like, I think, like, ideally you'd still have Galan there and you could have him developing because he is only 19 years of age. But you saw there was one score he got in the second half where he went up, caught it clean, turned off over his shoulder over the bar. I think he looks like Aaron Galan when Aaron Galan was first coming through too as well. He's that same kind of level of talent, similar style player, can win his own ball clean, big and strong, can hit over his shoulder on both sides. I think he's an absolutely unbelievable prospect. And I do think that, look, if Galan isn't around for the year, I think O'Brien, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up being a starting corner forward in this team as well, because I think he actually has some similar attributes to Galan, and it also frees up Flanagan to play the role that he wants to play, and he doesn't have to try and become that Aaron Galan. Like in the first game against Cork, he tried to play the Aaron Galan role and it didn't really work, and they've kind of gone to O'Brien ever since, and they just look a better team with that as well, that they can play that long ball in, and it's sticking with O'Brien too. So I do think he'll be quite happy. Again, players to come back in as well. Colin O'Neill's actually the one we haven't seen yet, and David Reedy's coming back too. I think Kiley will be quite happy. I think he'll have a word with Hayes, and I'd say he'll make sure that never happens again. And the Glan one, look, that's all up in the air, whether he comes back or not. My instinct at the moment is that he won't be back.
Yeah, that has a massive impact on the championship, whether or not he comes back. Like, he's that important to Limerick. I'll be keeping a close eye on it for sure. The next game then, really, if you're talking about results, this one completely jumps off the page at you. I mean, Clare 625, Wexford 118. It was down in Wexford Park. And Luke, I know it's the league, and I know we're talking about, how much emphasis teams are putting on the league, etc. But in any time of the year, this is a humiliating defeat.
Yeah, Dan, look, first of all, to say, look, Clare, really, really good and much improved. And yeah, it was very close to their full strength team. But just to touch on Wexford initially, that it's alarming what happened here. This is it was absolutely horrible. And when you look at all 6 goals, I'd say all 6 goals were their own fault, that they shot themselves in the foot. I think 4 of them I counted. They carried the ball out of their own defence, and they either turned over really, really weakly, or they played a stupid hand pass that was intercepted. They looked heavy. They looked leggy. They didn't look like you see Tony Kelly was just running past them as well. McCarthy had the freedom of the pitch for he was no player within 20 yards from for at least 2 of his scores as well. David Reedy was flying past them as well. It looks like they were either in the heaviest training block of the season, or that they're just miles off it. They did absolutely nothing right.
They looked like they just played a match. They were just finished playing a match.
It was like that they'd done a training session beforehand, or something like a heavy training session, because they looked like you could see Kelly for the Kelly goal, or when he played it across to Reedy, you could see him actually gliding across the pitch as well, and you could see the 3 or 4 Wexford lads trying to run back, and it looked like they were in slow motion chasing after him, and it's just
the worst one, Luke, was the Peter Duggan one by far. That was ridiculously easy.
But that was the thing. That was the first goal in the game. That was right at the start of the game too. That when they should be fresh, and there was a complete hole in the back line completely, and he just strolled through, and a little kind of tap of the wrist again straight at the keeper, and the keeper kind of dives out of the way of it as well. The whole thing was just car crash sort of stuff from Wexford, and that was in Wexford. Down in Wexford as well, a home match that Wexford have been so hard to beat, and then all of a sudden they're losing by, I think it was 22 points they lost by in the end. It's absolutely it's a humiliating result. And you compare last year, that when Darragh Egan first came in, they were unbeaten in the initial stage with the league, and they lost the semi-final, but they had kind of promise in the league, but they look in big trouble this year. That Galway played them off the park in that game as well. In the second half, they were absolutely miserable. I think they hit maybe 2 or 3 points in the second half. They kind of just about got over the line against Westmeath, that they pulled away in the last little while. And then today has been an absolute disaster. So I think you don't want to overreact to the league, and that they have Lee Chin, Matt O'Hanlon and Rory O'Connor to come back in. But I think, major warning, alarms should probably be going off in Wexford at the moment, because the Dubs look kind of a bit resurgent with Micheál Donoghue. Donoghue's going to have them absolutely primed for the championship, and if they want to get that 3rd spot in Leinster, they're going to have to get their arses in gear pretty quick.
No, without doubt. I mean, to add on to the 3 names that you said, Paddy Foley, Mark Fanning were also missing for this game, but they don't make a 22-point difference. I know it is a different Wexford side, but in terms of you should have your structure. I know the players are key to your team, but you should have your work rate, your effort, your commitment, and your system. That should never change. What you're about should never change. And particularly for the Peter Duggan goal, Wexford looked like they kind of knew that they were going to get pumped right from the beginning. They knew that. It's like the Peter Duggan one, it was here we go. And Clare just... You see, with Clare, they've put 625 down, and Aidan McCarthy looked brilliant. Tony Kelly looked as good as he always does. David Reedy looked class. But for me, I kind of can't take this game for anything, because they were allowed to look so good. There wasn't a hand laid on any of them for any of the goals. If you let Tony Kelly have a free shot at the goal from the 21-yard line or 13, he's going to score. So I can't really tell. Are they actually 625 scoring team right now, or were Wexford just so bad?
Yeah, well, that is the question. And the forwards you list there: Kelly, Reedy, Duggan, McCarthy, Davy Fitz, Ian Galvin, Ryan Taylor, all these players, we know that they can score. If they're unmarked for a second, they're scoring. But the question is, later on the year, when Clare play Limerick, like when they don't get the time. That's the question about Clare. And that, like last year, I think they answered that question, that they are able to live with Limerick, that they're going to give Limerick a game. And that's the thing, is the question for them is can they kick on that little bit more? Can they find those few extra players that can help them from going from being competitive to Limerick to turning Limerick over? And that's the real question for Clare. Like, I think, look, they'll be happy enough with they'll be happy enough, obviously, like any day score 625, they'll be absolutely delighted with the performance. But yeah, that's the question there as well. I think, like, I think as well, like I was saying with Galway, I think last week Clare were keeping a few cards close to their chest against Limerick as well last week. And that, I know they have a few players back. Conlon was back this week. Kelly was back as well. But they were well beaten by Limerick, to be honest, last week. It was only 5 points in the end, but it was at least a 10-point game last week as well. So can we read anything into that? I'm not fully sure as well. Can we read anything today? Again, I'm not sure either as well. I think the Clare that we see now in the league and the Clare we see in the championship will be a completely different animal. But like, when you list the forwards and the tallies that they put up, those players that I listed as well, Mark Rogers coming on as well, Davy Conroy as well, they've some serious scoring talent. And that's the thing, is that if they can find a way to compete around the middle with Limerick, and that they match the Limerick's work rate as well, they do have forwards that can hurt any team as well. So yeah, look, I think Clare will be an interesting one. It's always very, very difficult to predict with Clare, because you see them at their peak last year, what they did in Munster, and they look like all-Ireland contenders, and then they go up and play Kilkenny and Croker, and they're demolished on the day. So that's the thing, when you need to add that consistency. And look, you look at the 2 games they played. Obviously, the first day out, when they played Westmeath, when they put up a similar scoreline, I think they might have scored 6 goals that day as well, and looked absolutely unbelievable, albeit against Westmeath. They've done the same again then, but then against Limerick last week, they fell completely flat. So that's the thing with Clare, any sort of consistency, and they're looking at contenders, but can they get there?
Yeah, without doubt, I agree with you. And like, they'll be keeping a very close eye on Aaron Gallan's situation as well, no doubt, because he could be the difference for them and getting over the line, whether he
And
plays
they've
or
added
not.
McCarthy as well.
And they've Aid McCarthy back as well. Yeah, no doubt. They're even stronger this year than they were last year, which is hard to believe. Mark Rogers as well with the 6th goal. Fantastic finish. He is getting better and better as well. But no doubt, serious alarm bells should be ringing for Dara Egan and for Wexford. We're going to move on to the next game. Then this one happened at Croke Park. It finished Dublin 24 points, Tipperary 2 goals and 23 points. So 3 out of 3 for Liam Cahill in his now spell with the Tipperary side. The most interesting thing that I'm finding about this Tipperary side with Liam Cahill is the new faces that he's bringing in. The Garrod O'Connors, the Connor Stakelums. And again, a victory for them in this game. 3 out of 3. What are you making of Cahill's reign so far?
Yeah, well, look, it is night and day in comparison with last year, and that just by Cahill adding on an identity, and look, they look fitter, they look stronger, that they even just look bigger, I suppose, this year as well. Is that I think the structure that he's brought has probably brought Tipperary to where they should be. And to be honest, last year it probably was a bit dysfunctional on that. Like they there's no doubt in saying it, they are probably better coached at the moment, and they have a better understanding of their structure right now. Like, I think they have a good old shot at giving the league an actual a good run at winning it, I think, as well. Just with where they're at, they just seem to be in a good place at the moment. And that, yeah, like those new players they found as well. Like, I think Garrett O'Connor is like a big plus, and then beside him as well, Alan Tynan's a real interesting one too. I think he could be a fella that could get a decent bit of game time in championship this year, because he's got size, he's got speed, he's a Cahill type player that likes to carry the ball. He's very direct as well and likes to run at players, and that was the type of player he identified in Waterford. So I think he's a fella to watch out for too. The other one as well, Brian O'Mara, moved from the half-back line into full-back, and I thought he was absolutely brilliant. That the amount of hooks and blocks he got in the first half as well, he showed a bit of versatility, that he was happy enough to move Breen out the half-back, because I think he was looking at Dublin play that 2-man full forward line, and he wanted somebody that was fast, that could live with Considine. So O'Mara was that type of player. So I think, look, they've shown a few options here as well, and I think they'll be quite happy with how that went last night. I think they are in a good spot, and like, they've gone from last year, where probably like the weakest side in Munster maybe last year. I think bar Waterford. I suppose Waterford looked good in parts. They were the weakest team in Munster last year. to now all of a sudden that I think they'll be quite confident, I think, themselves that they should get one of the top 3 spots.
Yeah, well, when you look at like even the revitalized form of the likes of Jason Ford, it's like everyone's remembered how good these Tipperary lads are. It's like, oh, they're back on the right track anyway. And one of the first things that you pointed out when we were talking about Tipperary under Liam Cahill was Seamus Kennedy's positioning at wing forward. He's kept him there. And it is interesting that he had a half forward line of Alan Tyne and Gerard O'Connor and Seamus Kennedy. Now, this was pointed out by Jackie Tyrrell on League Sunday's analysis of the game. Like, do you think when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, is that to compete physically with Limerick's half back line of Diarmaid Burns, Declan Hannon, and Kyle Hayes or Dan Morrissey? Or would you think that it's just to have a big half forward line in general?
I think I know. Look, I think there is an argument there that he is looking for size there, and that, like, I think there's no doubt about it. Like last year, they didn't have enough size there. That they had, I think Jared Brown was playing out wing forward as well, and he had a good year as well. But he's not the type of player that I suppose is going to worry Limerick physically anyway as well. And he's the type of player that Limerick kind of tends to do quite well against as well. So what they're kind of doing is, I think he's looking for big, strong fellas that are comfortable running the ball, and that's Cahill's game, and that's what he likes to play as well. He's kind of moved his more physically strong players that are maybe a little bit on the slower side, the Ronan Mars, the Brian McGraths, into the half back line, that they're there to stop, and then the half forwards run the ball. So yeah, look, I think there's a very clear identity to what he's trying to do. I think Gerard O'Connor is going to have a big say in this year's championship team, because he can catch the ball, and as well he's well able to hit a score. And look, if Jason Ford's the free taker, but if something happens, I think, look, Gerard O'Connor as well could easily be a top 5 free taker in the country already. He's that good at them. He never seems to miss as well. It's just a pity for him that he's probably behind the number 1 free taker in the country at the moment. So yeah, I think it's shown a real clear identity. But the interesting part is how he's managing to do all this while keeping the more senior players involved. I think Callanan's going to have a big role this year. Bonner Maher might be in the full forward line as well. He's looked good when he's been in there too. Even like Dan McCormick's kind of been revitalised a bit as well. So he's managed to do all this as well, get his own type of player, his own style of play, but he's also managed to do it in a way that it suits the older players like Noel McGrath as well, that he's managing to keep all them involved too. So I think it's a promising start for Tipperary. They've shown really good signs. I'd just be a little bit worried about some of the injuries they picked up though as well. That look, Cathal Barrett, it remains to be seen if he'll be back or not yet. And we obviously know about the existing injuries before that too as well. Paddy Goodell's gone, and Kieran Connolly could have been a good player in midfield as well. He's gone for the year too. So and Jared Brown of course as well. So that's the thing. A little bit of a worry for them is the injuries, but yeah, look, I think they're in a good spot.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I like where they're at right now. Then thoughts on Dublin? Obviously, a defeat, but we've had a mixed bag. We've had a draw, a victory, and a defeat. This one, what worried me was our reliance again on Donald Burke. Haven't seen, in the Waterford game, a flash of how good Keane O'Sullivan and Alex Considine were in the forward line. I was thinking, oh, great, like we have other options now. We have other guys who do the damage for us. We were very reliant on Donald Burke in this game, and no goals scored.
Look, firstly, Donald Burke, just on his individual performance, it was outstanding. Like, it was just outrageous. I think it was 8 from play, and it was the difficulty of the scores as well. There was one particular one out the sideline where it looks like he's blocked, that the Tipperary hurl comes in on top of it as well. You can hear it hitting the hurl as well, and then the camera pans and the ball's over the bar as well. Like the difficulty of the scores he's hitting is just unbelievable. So look, first of all, I think his form as well is that he'd go into any team in the country at the moment, and he's just an outstanding forward. But look, it's spot on in the sense is that it is a bit worrying that I think some teams are probably going to look at it, like say if a Kilkenny are looking at that as well, is that they've got the best man marking cornerback in the country in Mikey Butler. So if I was Kilkenny going in and playing Dublin, I'd say, Mikey Butler, you're going on Donald Burke and you've no other job just to spoil him. And if he only scores 3 points from play, they'll probably say, yeah, we're gonna beat Dublin. So like I think that's the worry for Dublin a little bit as well, is that every team seems to have one of these players. Galway in Leinster will put Jack Grealish, I'd say, on him as well. And then maybe Wexford could put Damien Wreck or something on him as well. So that's the worry, is there enough pieces outside of that as well? I think Donohue's done a really, really good job so far. they look very, very competitive in every single game. They look huge improvements been made. He's found some new players like Paddy Doyle in the corner as well, Donoghue in midfield as well. He's found some really good pieces. The squad are playing really, really well. Just the question always remains with Dublin is, have they enough scoring forwards as well? Just to briefly touch it, I know Sullivan's picked up a knock. Constantine looks really good. So